Greetings to all, and I'd like to welcome you back to another one of our PACM Umoja sessions. I know we haven't been on air for quite a while, but we just could not miss this event. As you know, some of you may be aware that it's now the anniversary of President Magufuli's passing. So we find it only appropriate as PACM to come together today to honor his great legacy and his great work. As you can see, we'll have quite a few panel members today. With us, we have Brother Sibelo from Azania with us, and we hope to have some others. So as we go on, as they come in, I'll put them in the chat. And I'd like to say greetings again to Elder Pepperkai for being here, and we'll be imparting a lot of wise words to us today. But before we start, it's traditional to us to open proceedings with the change of energy. So now I'd like to pass you over to Ndugu Remani, who will be taking us through that ceremony.
Asante sana, Ndugu, and asanteni sana to all the family watching. Hamjambo Jamal, which basically means greetings, kindred, and welcome, as my dear brother said, to this special emoji session, remembering the life, works, and legacy of John Pombe Magufuli. But as said, we're going to do our African spiritual ritual, which is a form of libation, or tambiko in Kiswahili, and that's where we offer our energy, given a sacrifice of energy, give a sacrifice of ourselves, and give thanks to the ancestors, to of course the All, the Creator, and also to each other for being here. So what we're going to do is just follow. The way we do it here on the PACM is not only is it a form of this ritual that we should be practicing in our lives, in our daily lives, but it's also a form of a way of teaching and getting us used to being ourselves and following our own practices. And it still has reverence and respect for all other African spiritual practices. This is just one. And it's called Maba Diliko Ya Nishati, which means change of energy in Kiswahili. But in order for us to be in the right frame of mind and right spirit, what we're going to do is center ourselves using our breath, because breath is the key of life. So in order that, we're going to use that to center ourselves and move forward. So I'm going to ask us to participate in this, and if you wish to take part in your homes, please do. If you don't, you just want to watch, that's fine, and listen. Please do. There's no coercion in African spirituality. So I'm going to begin. First, I'm going to ask MZ Pepperkai here, or Elder Pepperkai. Is there a number that you're resonating with or pops in your mind that we can use to breathe together?
Yes, we'll go with 7.
7, beautiful. 7 is the spiritual quantity for wisdom, seeking, and truth and intuition. So what we're going to do is we're going to breathe out through our mouth. And as we do, we're going to pull our stomachs in. And then as we relax our stomachs, we breathe in through our nose. And that's 1. Okay, and I'll count in Kiswahili just to keep us in time. So if we can sit straight, your palm of your hands on your thighs, and your back straight so that your 7 energy centers are in line. So if we begin, we're going to breathe out. And relax and breathe in. And you might want to mute yourself, Ebzo Pepperkai. And we breathe out. Relax and breathe in. In Billy. And breathe out. Relax and breathe in. Tatu, breathe out. Relax and breathe in. Ne, breathe out. Relax and breathe in. Tana, breathe out. Start to feel more centered and more present. Relax and breathe in. Sita, and breathe out. And relax and breathe in. Saba, 7. And hopefully I got that right. So now just we'll move on. And so Ndugu, I'm going to share my screen. And that should be with you very soon. Okay, Ndugu, can you see that?
Yes, I can see that fine.
Yeah, we're fine? Okay, right. So,
yep, that's fine.
Okay, beautiful. So, mabadilika ya nishati. So, I'll continue with the ritual. Kubadilisha nguvu sasa, tunawashukuru wote. Mamlaka na mababu. Kuuliza kwamba tuna uhusiano wa karibu na kwamba watusaidie katika kuonyesha malengo yetu. Change the energy, we now thank the all, the powers and the ancestors, to ask that we have a closer connection with them and that they assist us in manifesting our objectives. And we use, as you can see, Kiswahili in this ritual. So in order to do that, to change that energy and give that sacrifice, I'm going to ring a triangle chime. And that chime rings, and hopefully you can hear it. We allow it to go around us, through us, and over us. Allow us to open up our consciousness through our third eye, the pituitary gland in the middle of our forehead, between our eyes, and open us up to universal consciousness, the all, the creator, and thereby allowing us to connect with each other wherever we are in the world. So I'm going to ask yourself in Dugutaka, is there a number that we can use to change that energy?
Yeah, number 7.
7 again, okay. So I'd like to go around you through and over you, and I'll begin. Continue to breathe deeply. Moja. Billy. Tatu. Ne. Tana. Sita. Saba. Wonderful. So continuing. So as we speak, I speak and then we speak in unison together. So, Ninaomba ya muumba awote. And then we say, Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Sisi ni kitu kimoja.
Ninaomba ya nebacha.
Sisini
Sini
Kitu
Kitu
Kumoja.
Kumoja. Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya mami wata. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya shu. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya tefnut. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kimoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya nut. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
And then we go on to the Kemetic tree of life, known as the PACMTV. Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya geb. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya alset. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya sebek. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya heteru. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya haru. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya herakuti. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya maat. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya sakar. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya tahuti. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Ninaomba kununina nguvu ya alsa. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
And finally, partner Teru, ninaomba kununina nguvu ya amen. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Wonderful. Now, as we've given thanks and appreciation to the Creator, the first ancestor, we can now give thanks to the ancestors in our direct bloodline. And so I'll begin. Ninaomba Mama Yangu Audrey Mae Kelly. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Please, family.
Ninaomba Mababu ya Iselin Rattigan, Sylvester Rattigan, Louise Hines, now Ruth James. Sisini
Kitu Kumoja. Indigo Sabella, if you're there. No? Okay. Right. We continue. So now we give thanks unto those who are in our direct bloodline. Now those who are not necessarily in our direct bloodline, but they inspire us and are part of the African family. I'll begin. Ninaomba Waze, Honorable Marcus Mazar Garvey, Amy Ashford Garvey, Amy Jacques Garvey, Marcus Garvey Jr., John Pombe Magufuli, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Winnie Mandela, Ya Santwa, Queen Nzinga. Sisini Kitu Kumoja.
Kitu Kumoja. Ninaomba Mababu ya Stephen Bantabiko, na Thomas Sankara, na Harriet Tubman, na Queen Nzinga, na Helen Soturi Jatta, na Sheikh Amadou Bamba. Sisini
Kitu Kumoja. And now we can also give thanks to those who we don't always know their names, or there's too many to mention. So just follow with me. Ninaomba Mababu ya Mangamazi, those who died in the African enslavement by Europeans and Arabs, neocolonialism and colonialism. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ni Kitu Moja.
Ninaomba mababu ya Gula Vita, those who died in the Gula Wars. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya Asian Revolution. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya watu ya the First Nations of Australia, Melanesians, Papuans, Tasmanians. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya wanachama ya PACM, ASHO, Freedom and Land Party, Black Panther Party, APLA, SWAPO. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya mataifa ya Kemet, Kush, Nubia, the taifa ya Zulu, Shangamar Dynasty, na Mosai. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Ninaomba mababu ya watu ya San, Twa, na Hutu. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Kitu Kamoja.
Ninawaomba wanaishi ambao watatetea sisi na wale mababu ambao bado hawajazaliwa. I call upon those living that defend us and those ancestors yet to be born. Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
Sisini Kitu Kamoja.
And finally, we end on the words of manifestation and power on the screen. So if you can just follow after me. Mapenzi wote ni mapenzi yangu.
Mapenzi wote ni mapenzi yangu.
Hakuna mwanzo na hakuna mwisho.
Hakuna mwanzo na hakuna mwisho.
Naomba ufahamu wangu ya wote uendelee kukua.
Naomba ufahamu wangu ya wote uendelee kukua.
Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu.
Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu.
Anuk, amen.
Anuk, amen.
The will of the all is my will. There is no beginning and there is no end. May my understanding of the all continue to grow. All power to our people. I am. Amen. Asanteni sana, Jamal. Thanks very much, family.
Yeah, asante sana for that. Okay, I'm glad here to have Sister Asha and Brother Lee, the Bandaka, should be here soon. Let me see. And Brother Sibello, are you still connected? Look like we have lost contact for the time being, Brother Sibello. Anyway, we'll start the meeting. As you know, we are here today to pay tribute to John Pombe Magufuli, the late president of Tanzania. And during his time as a president, he achieved some remarkable things. He achieved things that presidents who have been there for 40 years cannot begin to, in terms of the achievement, cannot begin to touch him. Now, despite the fact that he left us a year ago, he left a legacy, and that legacy shines on. Tanzania stands as a testament to what can be achieved. Magufuli was a person who could say no to the West. He could say no to the Chinese. He could say these deals are not in the interest of Tanzania. They must be renegotiated. And if you do not want to renegotiate them, well, let's cancel them. We're not begging. So Magufuli was a true African in a true spirit. Now what I like to do, I like to go around in turn And please spend up to 5 minutes making your tribute to John Pombe Magufuli. After which we will be opening the floor for more general discussion as to his lives and times. So, Brother Sabello, I'd like to start with you because I remember last
I
year.
might have to come back there.
Are you hearing? Okay, Brother Sabello?
Yes, I can hear you, my brother. My connection is playing
Okay.
up a bit, but I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Because I know you made a trip to Tanzania last year. And you gave a very, very kind of effervescent speech in honor and praise of what Machiavelli did. And I know you was talking mainly to young people, and they seem to be very, very enlightened and very, very impressed. So I would like to start with you in terms of giving your tribute to John Pombe Magufuli.
Thank you very much, Brother Tahaka. And I'd like to acknowledge everyone on the panel this evening. It's am I still on okay, Brother Tahaka? Because at some point I seem to have gotten lost.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, you're coming through.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. Excellent. Yeah, I would like to pay tribute to definitely one of the greatest heroes of our Africanness, modern day heroes, particularly time when most of our African leaders are in the pay packet of the West or the Chinese. He stood strong and ensured that even when he was speaking forth, in as much as he made it a point to put Tanzania first. In putting Tanzania first, one of the things that he was also very clear about was that he was putting Africa first. He was taking the whole concept and notion of the global African nation and therefore the oneness of Africa to a level that we are not seeing in the modern day African leader. In Tanzania made it even more clear that the people of Tanzania revered what Magufuli was doing for the people. He was celebrated in life and also after he passed on, because one of the things that he did was to set a standard, which standard was informed by the fact that he was a leader who understood the fact that being a leader does not entail being served by the people, but instead you are of service to the people. We see it in the manner in which he decided to even cut his own salary and instead put more into the development of the health system of Tanzania. And we see in the manner in which he stood strong against corruption, how he took a stand against the manner in which the Tanzanian nation was being exploited, and even in the awarding of contracts for the development of Tanzania, he looked first at what African countries can offer as against looking at what the West has to give to Africa or the Chinese to give to Africa in a manner that would be exploitative of the African nations. And one of the things that clearly Magufuli was about was to think beyond himself and beyond Tanzania. We see this when the West introduced COVID to the world. He clearly refused to lock down the nation of Tanzania. Not only was he informed by his realization of what exactly was happening, but also in the realization of the fact that locking down Tanzania was going to affect the inland countries who would now not have access to the sea and therefore would not be able to survive. Had he been thinking about himself and thinking about Tanzania only, he would not have bothered himself about what happens to the fellow African, about what happens to the reality of other people, because he would have known that Tanzania has access to the sea, so Tanzania can continue to thrive with or without these other nations being able to access the sea. And so we find in Magufuli a leader who was exemplary and still continues to be a shining example of what it is to be an African leader. And we see that even the young people in Tanzania today, I was in Tanzania again in October, and it was really heartwarming to find that the people in Tanzania still revere the work of John Pombe Magufuli, and the fact that even the current government in Tanzania is still pursuing some of the policies and some of the projects that were started by President Magufuli. This, for me, is one of the greatest things that has happened in the fact that there is a continuation of that which President Magufuli had started in Tanzania in many different ways. And also, interestingly for me, is that he had a personal relationship with Raila Odinga from Kenya, one of the aspirants in as far as the national elections of Kenya are concerned, coming up in August. And it was interesting to read a write-up by Mr. Odinga, basically talking to his relationship with Magufuli, and that he was one of the Magufuli as far as some of the policies implemented in Tanzania. So his being president was inspirational, and we pray and hope that if Honorable Odinga wins the elections, he will continue on the same trajectory as President Magufuli, and will take on the baton now as the president who speaks not only for the people of his own country, but speaks for the global African nation, and is able to withstand the pressure of the West, especially. One of the things that is hanging over our heads right now is the so-called global pandemic agreement. I'll talk about it more in the program, but that is one of the things that is threatening Africa, threatening the global African nation, and we're seeing a rerun of the eugenics agenda and the attempted elimination of all of our people. Thank you very much, Brother Tahaka.
Okay, Asante sana, Isabella. So yeah, next I'd like to go to Sister Asha. And Sister Asha, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can, Brother Tahaka. Can you hear me?
Oh, that's great. Yes, that's great. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Yes, I'd just like to pass over to you now for you to pay your tribute.
Thank you.
To Magufuli.
Yeah, for me, Magufuli was such a remarkable leader, and he embodied everything that his name suggested when they called him the bulldozer. He was unashamedly about reform-orientated leadership, something which is very, very rare on the continent today. And he was all about stripping away some of the trappings of government that we had adopted from the West and placing austerity not on the people, but on government because of some of the lavishness that had crept into the way our governments were run. And he then proceeded to strip all of that away and to test amongst his ministers whether they were there to serve the people or to serve themselves. As the previous brother Sabelo has just said, are you there to serve the people or are you there to serve yourself? So if you are, then you shouldn't mind that you're going to be taking economy when you fly. You shouldn't mind that we're going to use cars which don't have to be brand new. You shouldn't mind that I'm going to remove some of you from your jobs because you're not needed, and I'm going to strip the government down from 30 ministers to 19. You shouldn't mind that I'm now going to start taxing some of your friends in private companies who have been deliberately stealing money from Tanzania and pocketing that money, with some of you taking backhanders. You shouldn't mind that. And those that did found themselves stripped, and those that remained, we went from 30 to 90 ministers. And what I particularly loved about Magufuli is that he saw the importance of internal infrastructure development, and he sought to use income that he had rightly taken out of the behind of some of these mining companies who had been ritually stealing money from the tax purse of Tanzania. And Acacia Mining is one that comes to mind, who had stolen millions. And so the first thing Magufuli did was remove their right to international arbitration. Because once you remove the right of international companies to go to their own people to seek redress, then they have to do business in Tanzania or get out. And so once he removed that right to international arbitration, they then had to settle that bill of $300 million, which came to over $1 billion Tanzanian shillings. And so that was a particular move that Magufuli made, which was about re-evaluating the financial position of Tanzania in order to raise the economic standards of the people. And he succeeded in doing that. And, we don't often talk about, the GDP of countries, but this is what is measured on international standards. And so if you can imagine that the GDP, that is the amount of money that the country makes divided by the number of people. They also have purchasing power as well, but divided by the number of people. And if you can imagine, the richest countries are the Arab states, but the richest European country is America at close to $60,000 per head of people in the country. And that is to show you how rich that country is as it continues to starve Africans and murder Africans on the streets. $60,000 per head of people. UK, $40,000 per head of people. These are high income states. And Tanzania was raised from a low income state, which is where my country is, Malawi, which is at $550 following its slavish linking to the COVID program. $550, our GDP went down. Tanzania did not link itself to the COVID slavish behavior, and its GDP went up. And they raised the GDP from a low income to a middle income country at over $1,000 per head of the population. And that has dropped to about $975. But nevertheless, it's still up there. And so I have a lot of love for the way that the bulldozer sort of came in and pushed reform-orientated leadership and also focused on internal financial revolution of the country, because he knew that if he could do that, his hands would not be tied by China and by the West in terms of loans and everything else. If I get more time, I'll talk about the work that he did with Ethiopia, and in particular, the move that he made to agree to teach Kiswahili in Ethiopian universities, and what the importance of that would mean for moving towards Kiswahili as the international language of Africa. Thank you.
Okay, Asante sana, Sister Asha. Next, I'd like to move to Brother Leader Bandaka of the Cable and Revivalist Movement for your tribute to Magufuli.
Tendai mwari mukurukuru kuzai muzimu mukuru tendai mwari rumbidzo kuna mwari ye Africa. To the God of Africa be the glory, giving thanks and praises unto mwari Nyakusika, God the creator of the universe, through muzimu mukuru, our great ancestors, for blessing us to gather here this afternoon, sons and daughters of Africa, to pay tribute of a worthy warrior king, a worthy freedom fighter, a father of Africa, a son of Africa, a leader of an African state, bold and brave, rich in spirit, dignity, and integrity. African spirit, African dignity, and African integrity. Let me say greetings in the most precious, powerful, and bountiful name of our motherland, our Kebulan, Mama Africa, in the sacred spirits of our most gracious ancestors, and in a prayer for oneness, hope, and prosperity for all African people on the face of Mother Earth. Yes, we are gathered to honor Baba, Brother Pombe Magufuli, a true leader of an African nation, one who stood firm in the spirit of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey, who pronounced rightly Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. Baba Pombe Magufuli was determined during his tenure that Tanzania would serve that principle, that the resources of Tanzania were going to be channeled towards the empowerment, the security, the safety of the people of Tanzania, and in a broader sense, the people of Africa. And as has already been said, he started with himself. He started with himself by reducing his own income from $15,000 to $4,000. Think about that. He cut his own income in almost a quarter of what he was nationally and legally entitled to. And then he demanded of his cabinet that they must also discipline themselves for the challenges ahead, that before we ask the people to make sacrifices, we ourselves as the leaders, as the government of the nation, must make sacrifices. So all of this lavish living, first class, traveling, huge entourages, traveling on diplomatic ventures, had to be curtailed. So we have to travel on economy class. We had to have our meetings and our conferences in spaces that we are already paying for and not in lavish hotels. These are some of the principles that he stood by. He waged war, as already been said, against corruption. He was also firm on the principle of indigenous ownership of the means of production, the land, labor, capital, enterprise, industries, businesses, all had to be, or primarily had to be, in the hands of the Tanzanian people, and where we invite foreign investors, the brand of foreign investment must benefit the people and the nation of Tanzania. No more free lunches for foreign powers, for foreign investors. They had to pay their taxes, for example, and they didn't like him for that. Widespread infrastructural development, industrialization, or the enhancement of the nation's industries, were among his policies. He, amongst other things, brothers and sisters, he also was firm on the civil service being disciplined, come to work, and coming to work early. He visited civil service offices and found that people were not at work when they should be at work. And people were sacked. Civil servants were sacked. Heads of civil services were sacked because they were not where they should have been at the right time. He visited hospitals and observed that our people were sleeping on the floor, that machines that were supposed to be operating, caring, and healing the sick were not functioning. And the heads of these hospitals were not doing what they were supposed to do. So he sacked them, put new people in place, and gave them a time frame in which to get the hospitals up to standard, get machines working, and buy beds to put in hospitals. He canceled independence celebrations because our people were suffering and dying of cholera. He says that's a nonsense. How can our people be dying of cholera? And we're there celebrating independence and jumping up and dancing. No. We're canceling independence celebrations, and we're going to use that money to spend on our hospitals. We're going to use that money to get our machines working in our hospitals. Those are just some of the principles and some of the disciplines that were firmly established and defended by our Baba Pombe Magufuli. But let me, in rounding off my opening remarks, let me, brothers and sisters, evoke his words, and in so doing, evoke his spirit. Because I believe we still have a duty to interrogate the untimely passing of our great Baba, our great leader. Not least because he was, when he passed, just the latest in a history of progressive, scrupulous, disciplined African leaders, revolutionary African leaders, who were either toppled or assassinated. And therefore, notwithstanding a diagnosis of natural causes, we as revolutionaries, freedom fighters, whatever we want to call ourselves, intelligent Africans, must interrogate the cause of our brother's death. As we sing his praises, as we dance and hail his bravery, his courage, his determination, his tenacity, are we questioning the fact that he died so suddenly and the fact that history bears witness to the assassination of good, great, promising African leaders. Let me share with us his words, which serves, I believe, as a premonition of what his fate was going to be. He said, if there's anything bad that's going to happen to me because of Tanzania, let it happen. But I will always stand for justice in all my life. I told you earlier, I decided to start an economic war. An economic war is very bad. It's very bad. The imperialists are not going to be happy about this. There are so many African leaders, you know what happened to them. It's because their countries were rich in mineral resources and the imperialists wanted all of their mineral wealth. Right now, we are waiting to renegotiate some terms with some mining companies. But if they turn up late, I'm going to close all of their mines. It's better we return these mines to our fellow Tanzanians. We are willing to pay a tax rather than these big corporations who don't want to pay taxes. It really amazes me how so few Tanzanian traitors decided to betray their nation after being paid peanuts by corporates. You will find them busy misleading the public. These are traitors and enemies of development. You should invoke a curse against such people. Such people are agents of Satan. It's a big shame such acts are usually done by people in big positions. It is a big sin and very disrespectful to our people. Our country has people who lack clean water, good roads, medicines, electricity, etc. At the same time, our mineral wealth is being looted by foreign corporations without caring about humanity. Let me crown those powerful words by the man we are exalting this evening because of his great works, because of his tremendous vision and the plan, the monumental plan he had for African empowerment in Tanzania. It concerns me. It concerns me, and it should concern all of us, that the present administration led by our sister, Samia Suluhu Hassan, has invited Tony Blair, of all people, to be advisor to the government of Tanzania. Baba Pombe Magufuli talked about traitors and that we should pronounce a curse upon them. That's treachery, and it must be said. It must be called out, beloved brothers and sisters. And we also know that there are government ministers who have since resigned because they feel that the great work and vision and sacrifice of Baba Pombe Magufuli is being trashed in Tanzania. I would like to hear the views of other speakers this evening on that matter. But let me close by giving thanks and praises for this opportunity, and by evoking the spirit of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey, to empower us, to drive us forward in this reasoning this evening. He says, unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbitso kuna mwari ya Africa. To the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai mwari.
Okay, asante sana,
Katenda.
brother leader. Okay, and I'd like to now turn to Elder Pepperkai for you to pay your tribute. Okay, I think you're muted, Let's see.
Yes, just before my tribute, I just got a call to say that only pictures and the broadcast, no sound.
Well, I've just double checked that, and the sound's coming through on my end. Could anybody who's watching, please, could you tell me if you're getting sound? If you are, just put a 1 in the comment, please. If you're not getting sound, put 2. Because I've just tried my link and sound's coming through from my end. Let's see, I have just checked. Broadcast sound and picture is good. Well, I've just got a message that everything's now good and clear.
Good to hear.
Okay.
First, let me say salutation to Brother Leader and my sister Asha. When they joined the broadcast, I had to go somewhere else, so my apologies. Let me begin by saying that the question we should ask ourselves, what manner of man is Pombe Magufuli? He is truly a great son of Africa, a man of the people. But let us remember that Magufuli didn't just drop out of thin air. Tanzania is one of the most progressive countries in the whole of Africa, starting with our beloved past president, Nyerere, the uncorruptible president. Because when he see clearly that there was a need for change, a need to provide for the people of Tanzania, he didn't set about to copy what other people were doing. He set about looking for an African solution to an African situation. And he came up with the Ujamaa approach of collective building for the well-being of the people. And as been noted by other presenters, that he could have, like all the others, begin to continue the colonial legacy of speaking in a foreign language. He said, we're not mute. We speak for ourselves and we speak in our own tongue. The only African country to do that. It is regrettable that when you had the debate between himself, Nyerere, and Nkrumah wanted a United States of Africa. No, Nyerere wanted a gradual approach. And regrettably, Nyerere's argument carried the day. And we see where we are today. Because we know what an African Union instead of a United States of Africa. And while some of us may be jumping up in praise of an African Union following Europeans, it moves us away from our goal. But coming back full square to Pombe Magufuli, he was a man of purpose, a man of conviction, and having the strength of courage to lead by example, as other presenters have made very clear. Because we can't imagine the lavish, wasteful lifestyle that our presidents live. And that's why they can't give it up. He was leading by example Not just you, the people, tighten your belt. We tighten our belt first, and we show you how it's done. And we all in this together. And that is a great lesson to all of us, because he showed us what was possible. And what is so remarkable about the short space of time is what he was able to achieve. It was as if he waved a wand. But no, it was no wand waving. It was no magic. It was about being responsible. It was about delivering. It was about using the great resources, not for a select few amongst themselves and the greater sure go to foreign lands. No, this is all resources and must be put to the use of our people. And we are the one to benefit. We don't mind sharing with others, but we are the one who are gonna decide how it's shared, because it's ours. So, the best tribute that we can pay in recognizing leadership is to follow in his footsteps, because he was truly a champion of decolonization. That is where we all have to begin. And decolonization begins with the mind. We first must know who we are. We are Africans. And we must begin to behave like Africans and stop imitating other people who come back with second-hand information and practices. How do you explain that in some parts of Africa, the elite, those people who have stolen money, have two weddings? One, a proper wedding, an African way of doing things. Yet we go to Europe and get messed up until we get married again. Where do you ever see such nonsense? Only in a confused mind. And that is what Magufuli sets out to change. For us to do the right thing by our own means, from our own tradition. And he did it with such dignity and with so much love for the people. And we must remember that he wasn't one who was waiting for instruction from outside as to what to do. He was there to work with the people, to find solutions, to develop together for the benefit of our people. And as has been said by all the presenters, that he wasn't just doing it for Tanzania. Because wherever we are as Africans on this planet, we was uplifted by his vision, his courage, and the urgency of his application. He wasn't ramping. This was one man who don't ramp. It was business in a very efficient and practical and sensible way. I may have gone over my 5 minutes, so I'll rest it there. But our tribute has got to go beyond words. It has to go into practicality. It has to be our will our desire with urgency. I'll stop there for now.
Okay, Asante Sana, Elder Pepekai, for that. Now at this point, I'd like to start to open things up. So I'm sure there's a lot more, all of us has to say about Magufuli, because he did such extensive work during the time he was president of Tanzania. But just before going to that, I'd like to play a short clip, just about a couple of minutes of Magufuli in action. And this is a particular, I picked this clip because it shows the state of affairs that was going on before Magufuli came to office and what he was doing to try and clean things up. So I'll just put this clip on very briefly.
Manake, you are not allowed to construct any port. Masharti wanataka ukishawapa pale huruhusiwi hata kwenda kucollect revenue. TRA mnaisema iko hapa, hairuhusiwi kukanyaga pale mkishafanya.
Let me start on the beginning. I don't think that's
wanatakiwa uwape guarantee ya kwanza bila kuwauliza miaka 33, lakini ndio nawaeleza sasa. Lakini unatakiwa uwape rizi tofauti na sheria za nchi for 99 years. Na huruhusiwi hata kwenda kumuuliza atakaye kwenda kuwekeza pale. Na wao wawe na mandate ya kuichukua hiyo eneo kama ardhi yao. Lakini mnatakiwa mlipe compensation ya kazi watakayoifanya ya kudrag, kuchimba ile bandari. Masharti mengi ya ajabu. Kwa hiyo najaribu kuzungumza haya ili kusudi sisi wa Tanzania tumechezewa mno miaka mingi. We are supposed to change. Na watu wamekuwa wakizunguka. They do a lot of lobbying.
Okay. Okay, that was just a clip. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, that was a brief clip talking, the whole. I'm sure you've heard about the case before about the Chinese trying to build the docks, and when Magufuli found out that they wanted a 99-year lease, they wanted to be put in the contract that they will not be paying any taxes, and also put in the contract that the port that they build, the land surrounding it, including the port, will be sovereign Chinese territory. And of course, when he saw that, he had to put his foot down and say nothing like that cannot happen. And as a consequence, the Chinese actually cancelled. That contract was cancelled. I'm not sure what the situation's got now in terms of that port. But under Magufuli, it was cancelled because the terms was absolutely ridiculous. So now I'd just like to open up. So Sister Asha, I'll start with you because you said something about Magufuli and Ethiopia in bringing Kiswahili to Ethiopia. Could you expand on that a bit, please?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Tahaka. I mean, one of the things that I think the Western media spent so much time talking about Magufuli as a demon and trying to groom people into seeing Magufuli as the worst thing that had ever happened to Tanzania, that a lot of the other things that Magufuli was doing were not reported on. So, for example, Magufuli and Ethiopia had a number of development meetings, and they were quietly working away to strengthen their economic ties. And that started with the granting of an amnesty in January 2021 to release all of the Ethiopians who had been residing in Tanzania illegally. And so they were all released unconditionally, and they were told by Magufuli to go home and build their nation. And it was the same with the people from Burundi as well. And we all know how that was reported. He focused on upskilling, go home, upskill, and in particular, work to build your nation. But with Ethiopia and Tanzania, they were about upskilling each other. Ethiopia is one of the most developed countries in Africa. And one of the things that Ethiopia had that Tanzania was seeking to invest in was hydropower. We all know about the dam on the Nile with Ethiopia. And so Ethiopia was sharing its knowledge with Tanzania to build the dam. And what they were trying to do was also to move away from English as the national language so that they could communicate with each other during these infrastructure projects. And Ethiopia was in the process of granting Tanzania the right to come and teach Kiswahili in Ethiopian universities. Now, to know how significant that is, you have to know about Ethiopia as a country that did not allow others to come in and teach anything to its people because of its history of fighting against colonization and never having been colonized. So that right there was a remarkable agreement, because what it meant was that one of the largest countries in Africa would adopt Kiswahili as one of its national languages and move away from English as the only accidental language. English was an accidental language. Kiswahili would have been adopted as another language that people would have been encouraged to speak. And we all know that with people, with a language comes people. And so it was important to look at how Kiswahili being taught in Ethiopia would encourage the spread of Kiswahili right across East Africa, going from east to west. Tanzania, you know the countries that surround Tanzania, but in particular, I'm looking at Uganda, I'm looking at Rwanda, and I'm looking at the Democratic Republic of Congo, where all of these languages would have converged, and the growth of Kiswahili with the support of Ethiopia, with the sharing of technology around hydropower, and what that would have done. And we would also most likely have then been seeing a dispute between the West and Tanzania about which waterway they were going to use for that hydropower, because you already had the dispute with the Chinese over them wanting to control the port. And so what Magufuli was doing when that contract was cancelled was to look for another way to get that work done, focusing on internal financial nationalism. And the focus was on uniting with Ethiopia to bring hydropower technology to Tanzania. And then we had the upskilling and the teaching of language to bring those countries together, but not just Ethiopia, all of the countries going from east to west. And that for me was a significant moment, because what it showed is that Africans were no longer prepared to sit and wait to be given fish by the Western world. We were teaching ourselves how to fish from an internal economic movement.
Okay. So who would like to comment next? You know, it's just an open discussion now, so feel free to come through. And For instance, Brother Sabello, you talked about Magufuli earlier and his relationship with Raila Odinga of Kenya. That Odinga was a very close friend and also an advisor to Magufuli. Could you just expand on that for us?
Yeah, I think the critical aspect with that and mentioning it is that the relationship between the two of them was such that Odinga got directly involved not only as a personal friend of Magufuli, but also from a perspective where now around the issues of the economy and the general advancement of the people of Tanzania, he played a role in shaping that particular narrative. And he's even made a commitment that if elected into presidency in Kenya, he is going to continue on the same trajectory that Magufuli had taken in as far as Tanzania is concerned. So our hope now is that if he does follow through on that same trajectory, it will be as expansive and as radical as what we saw with Magufuli in Tanzania. Because Kenya is a very important country in as far as the Western agenda for Africa is concerned. Because they see Kenya as basically one of the um, springboards into the penetration and therefore the control of African countries, particularly within the eastern side of the continent, just like they see South Africa as the door into Africa and therefore the perpetuation of the neo-colonial agenda. Just as much as they see Nigeria in the west and Egypt in the north. So it becomes absolutely critical that as much as possible, the continuation of Magufuli's policies is maintained in a manner that goes beyond the Kenyan narrative, in the same manner that Magufuli saw it fit to keep the borders of Tanzania open so that the neighboring countries could continue to thrive when he resisted the COVID narrative. It is our hope that Raila Odinga, in his commitment to the Magufuli style, he will also be as committed in fighting corruption. He'll also be as committed in ensuring that the Kenyan people begin to realize the benefits of the resources of Kenya. And definitely that the African people begin to have a port of call which they will identify with in advancing themselves as African people. In the same way that Sister Asha is talking about how Magufuli had established the relationship with Ethiopia, it is also important to look at the relationship he had established with Burundi, and particularly President Nkurunziza, who suffered the same fate as him in June 2020. And amongst the things that President Nkurunziza had done
Right.
was to take a stand in as far as COVID is concerned, in as far as the push against the World Health Organization, which organization is basically about taking over our countries. And it's unfortunate that we have African countries who think the World Health Organization is there for our good, whereas it's an entity that is basically unelected, but now wants to assume a stronger position than the constitutions of the countries. And the sad reality is that without leadership of the caliber of Magufuli, we are doomed as an African people. Because as we speak right now, there is the African Medicines Agency that came into being, is it November 2021, with the final ratification to get the number of countries necessary for that, which is looking at so-called synchronization of the pharmaceutical industry across Africa and the medicines policies within Africa. And behind this is none other than the World Health Organization. And they're looking at spreading this right across the continent such that our own medication, it does not play a role anymore. And they are pushing the pharmaceuticals to a higher level than
That's
the
right.
natural African medications. And this is one of the things that Magufuli was very strong on. President Magufuli, when this COVID thing was being touted, and even long before the so-called vaccination became a real issue, he was clear that we in Tanzania are researching on our own natural medicines. We are taking a position informed by Africa first, in as far as how we heal ourselves before we take things that we do not know and do not understand. So he invested not only in the advancement of hospitals, as Brother Lita Mbandaka was talking about, which was a great achievement, but he was also clear that in as much as we are talking hospitalization, we are also talking about our own natural ways of healing using the God-given herbs that we have. We are not going to take big pharma and let big pharma determine what goes into our bodies when we can find our own Tanzanian solutions. So it's interesting that till now, Burundi and Tanzania have not signed on to the AMA. They have not signed on to this thing, and more so that together with the African Medicines Agency is the Global Pandemic Agreement that the World Health Organization is pushing through now, which gives the World Health Organization greater power and greater authority to declare a so-called pandemic. Once they have declared a so-called pandemic, it gives them the power to pronounce lockdowns right across the world without anyone being able to challenge them. And further to that, it gives them power to then decide what sort of medication must be administered, and everyone must take that particular treatment. And it is important to realize the role of the Wellcome Trust together with the Bill Gates Foundation in all this. And the Wellcome Trust, it is important further, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to look at their role in as far as the eugenics agenda, in as far as their desire and their approach to get rid of us as African people. This is becoming now a fight that has to be fought by the global African nation. Our so-called leaders are selling us out day in, day out. If this was happening and we had someone like President Magufuli in power, we would rest assured that we have a voice for the global African nation at a level that will speak and be heard. So it's absolutely critical that we pursue that. And it is my hope, it is my desire that definitely Raila Odinga, once elected, will continue on the same trajectory that he was on when advising Magufuli. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Senator Sana. Would like to come through now, Brother Leader? Any more to say?
Tanamari. Well, let me first of all give due acknowledgement to my counterparts, as it were, the Brother Sabelo, Sister Asha, and of course to give due respect to our elder among us, Elder Pepukai. Give thanks and praises for the voice of the ancestors that are coming through us this evening to enlighten our people. Much important information has been shared. But as we speak and as we reflect on the legacy of Pombe Magufuli and what he had accomplished in such a short space of time and what it promised for Tanzania and for Africa as a bastion of self-determination and self-sufficiency, a bastion of courageous leadership, one that was prepared to stand firm against the forces and the excesses of Euro-American imperialism in particular, and even Chinese imperialism, and there is such a thing as Chinese imperialism. And the sooner we understand it, and by the way, there is such a thing as Russian imperialism as well. Let's throw that into the mix. And it's important we understand all of that. It is also important that we understand the fundamental principle of global geopolitics, which is whoever controls Africa rules the world. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. If we don't understand that, it's like Mama Frances Cress Welsing saying, if you don't understand white supremacy, what it is and how it affects you, then everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. If we engage in the discussion of the African continent and the fate of the African continent without the understanding of that fundamental governing principle of global geopolitics, which is whoever controls Africa rules the world, then everything else will confuse us. Everything else will confuse us. And so it makes sense that African leaders who stand firm to defend the interest of African people are going to evoke the wrath of the West, the so-called West, that they will want them dead, and that they have highly sophisticated ways of removing African leaders now. It doesn't have to be the blatant way in which they did in the case of Patrice Lumumba, for example. They have more highly sophisticated ways. And it just concerns me that over the last year, the number of discussions that I've heard about the legacy of Baba Magufuli, his tremendous vision, his sacrifice, his tenacity, etc., and how little expressed concern about his death and interrogating that and having discussions around that. The question comes to mind, how long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? We expect our leaders to stand up with integrity. We expect them to stand up against the forces of European, Euro-American imperialism. We expect them to stand up and resist neocolonialism. And let us remind ourselves that neocolonialism is colonialism. Let me say that again. Neocolonialism is colonialism. And the urgency with which we deemed it necessary to rid the African continent of colonialism is the same urgency that we need to pronounce against neocolonialism, because it is colonialism. It is there to serve a colonial master who is using a far more highly sophisticated mechanism of control, using our own people, creating systems, political systems, and putting in place governments and leaders that are there to serve their interests. Now, when saying that, just drawing on some of the points that Sister Asha made earlier on, and the connection that Sister Asha made with Ethiopia. Of course, we see what is happening in Ethiopia now with the so-called civil war or civil crisis. And I want to suggest that that's a proxy crisis or a proxy war situation going on in Ethiopia. Because anyone who knows, has sufficient information about the politics of Ethiopia will know that the Tigray People's Liberation Front has been for the last 30 years funded and controlled by the USA with support from the EU. And so what we are talking about is a proxy a war against the Ethiopian government. And it's a proxy war that is being waged by the European Union and the USA against the Ethiopian government using the TPLF. And if we understand some of the ideas of reformation or reform that the president of Ethiopia had laid out, President Abiy Ahmed had laid out for Ethiopia. And let me just quote quickly his own words when he appeared at when he received the so-called Nobel Peace Prize. Another set of foolishness, but nonetheless, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Notably, President Afwerki was not invited to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Both of them signed the peace treaty. When Mandela and de Klerk decided to dismantle apartheid, both of them were invited to receive Nobel Peace Prize and to hold their hands up and hold the Nobel Peace Prize together. But when two brothers on the African continent decide to end a war that was fueled by foreign forces, only one was invited to receive a Nobel Peace Prize, as if he had signed the peace agreement on his own. One hand can't clap, yeah. And so one nation can't orchestrate a peace agreement. It has to be two nations. But anyway, Abiy Ahmed said, the Horn of Africa today is a region of strategic importance. The global military superpowers are expanding their military presence in the area. I hope brothers and sisters understand that this was part of his Nobel so-called lecture, Nobel Peace Prize lecture. He says terrorists and extremist groups, let me read that last sentence again. The global military superpowers are expanding their military presence in the area. Terrorists and extremist groups also seek to establish a foothold. We don't want the Horn of Africa to be a battleground for the superpowers or the hideout for the merchants of terror or the brokers of despair and misery. Notice how he's talking about the global superpowers and terrorists in the same breath, and how they're running a rampage in the Horn of Africa. Who are these superpowers that he's talking about? Who are these superpowers? It's the same Americans, the same European nations. These are the superpowers that he's talking about. They're running a rampage in the Horn of Africa. He says, we want the Horn of Africa to be a treasury of peace and progress. Indeed, We want the Horn of Africa to become the Horn of Plenty for the rest of the continent. And we know that since becoming president in 2018, that he has reached out. Not only did he end the war and the conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea, that again was fueled by the United States of America. Let's understand this. And one of the reasons why they didn't like Afwerki, because he would not allow them, these foreign powers, to come and run a rampage in his country. Right? He didn't run to the IMF to borrow money from the IMF. He's on a program of self-determination in Eritrea. Eritrea doesn't feature very often in our Pan-African discussions, but something important. I'm not saying it's a perfect model. That's not what I'm suggesting, but it is an interesting model. And it's a model that moves away from the convention of succumbing to the forces of global white supremacy and allowing them to just come in and take over your industries, take over your natural resources. He has been the leader, and the nation has been standing against that for decades with very little reference in our Pan-African discussions and recognition of that. And it's important that we recognize that. He did things like released thousands of prisoners, many of them are so-called terrorists. Now, this whole terrorism narrative has a political agenda, has its own political agenda. And we must remind ourselves that this started with the 9/11 so-called bombing of the Twin Towers, where two massive buildings that were hit by airplanes collapsed within an hour to an hour and a half. Over 100,000 tons of masonry, 100,000 tons of metal. The masonry pulverized to dust. The metal turned molten metal. It melted. Never happened in history. Grenfell burned for 48 hours and the structure is still standing. A much weaker building than these Twin Towers that were built to withstand multiple impacts. Pulverized. And you have experts who have looked at it time and time again and said, this only happens, in my experience, this only happens as a result of controlled demolition. That expert opinions are shocked. Building 7 wasn't hit, but that also 47 stories, hundreds of scores of tons of metal and masonry pulverized and melted. Never seen before in history. Never happened since, but happened 3 times on that day. That was what launched the war against terrorism. And that was followed by the invasion of Iraq, which was prosecuted on a lie. We all know that now. The Chilcot report kind of helps with that. So this is a world that we're in, brothers and sisters, right? And the Tony Blair, the liar in chief, who prosecuted that war in Iraq, is now on the African continent in some 14 African countries as advisor, including Tanzania. And I would invite my brother and sister and our elder to make a comment on that, because that concerns me. So as not to take up too much time, you can probably judge from from a spirit, brothers and sisters, that I may well just go on and on and on, and I won't do that this evening. Africa, brothers and sisters, Africa is in desperate shape as we speak. I don't like saying it, but it is true. Now we have to be concerned about the fate the safety and the security of our brother Abiy Ahmed, Prime Minister of Ethiopia. They don't like him. They're angry with him because he has exposed them. He went to the World Economic Forum, that nasty global institution. He went there and he told them, in fact, they asked him a stupid question. When he did a speech to the Davos meeting, the annual Davos meeting in January 2019. And when he sat down for his interview, one of the first questions he was asked was, when he went to Asmara, the capital of Eritrea, was he not worried? Didn't he feel that he was somehow in danger because of the war that's been going on in Eritrea for so long, and blah, 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 blah. And you know what his response was? He said coming to Davos was far more dangerous than going to Asmara. Just think about that for a moment. I loved it. Think about that for a moment. And that interview is worth watching. That interview is worth watching because he talked about a vision for the Horn of Africa and a vision for East Africa, whereby there's one army serving the interest of the Horn of Africa and East Africa, one embassy. He doesn't see the purpose of having separate embassies representing the nations of East Africa when these embassies are so expensive to run. One embassy. He's talking about an economic union, a tighter, closer economic union within the Horn of Africa. Those are visionary ideas. Now, I'm not saying that Abiy Ahmed is a revolutionary, but he appears to have some radical reformist ideas that makes them very uncomfortable. And what makes them uncomfortable makes me glad indeed. Tendai Mali.
Okay, Tendai Mali, brother. Ndaka, Elder Pepperkai, you'd like to do a summing up? Because time is fast approaching, beating us both, because I've got a little announcement to make at the end about Africa Liberation Day.
Let me pick up from where Brother Bandaka paused. And that is to say that Africa and we Africans are in trouble. We are in serious trouble. Because our enemies have been pouncing on us, and our state of preparedness leave us in a very weak position. Because, as Brother Mandaka has said, whoever controls Africa controls the world. Africa is a great feeding tree that everybody perch on to milk, to drain, to devour. Because when you look at the kind of deals that these African leaders sign up to, you have to say the question, are they all mad? I'm reminded of a situation whereby Zambia had problem with managing his copper industry. And they entered into a deal with some European outfit. And they would come in, take over the mine, don't pay 1 penny to Zambia, and they put the mine into production, raise a whole heap of money, and then pay back Zambia whatever the agreed price. And they end up owning the mine and paying Zambia some little chicken feed out of it. And you ask yourself the question, who would sign an agreement like that? But sadly, not all the leaders are like Magufuli. And they signed up because what they get, they can split it among themselves. And they're happy, where the rest of us become impoverished. But let us come back to the point Brother Sabella spoke about, and that is to deal with this whole called World Health directives in Africa. Very recently, Pfizer, one of these concoction manufacturer and distributors of so-called vaccine, they're planning to build a factory in Kenya. Because what they're saying, that what they've developed in Europe, that's high quality stuff, and something of lesser quality, more affordable, should produce in Africa by them. And once we understand that this whole vaccination, so-called vaccine agenda, has nothing to do with health, nothing to do with a pandemic, but very much a plandemic, then we begin to get the picture as the danger we face as a global people. Because the leaders who should be on the watch and to prevent this vicious attack on the rest of us are colluding because they've been given money. And you ask yourself the question, how mad can we be to allow this to happen? Because even the brother who Brother Sabella speak about, hoping to win a presidential election to rescue us in Kenya. Remember, the best that we can do is vote. We don't count the vote. So whoever count the vote, declare who win. So I'm very glad that we're back on this platform. And must bear in mind that we don't control fully the machination, because quite a few times that you see them get distracted. I'm being informed that at some point we have images but no sound. So let us understand that the forces that we're up against are not resting, they're not pausing, and they're coming at full speed because so much is at stake. Our very survival as a people. Because they're talking about transhumanism. So if we think that slavery, colonialism, whether it's neo or whatever term you want to call it, as Brother Bandaka said, colonialism is colonialism. Whether it's soft or harsh, it's still colonialism. How prepared are we for the time that we're in? How much do we understand the gravity as to what awaits us? And how willing we are to humble ourselves and to come to one conclusion. We are all that we've got. Nobody gonna come out of the ground. Nobody gonna come out of the sky. No wind, no fire, no water gonna come as any kind of miracle savior. We, out of this wretched condition we find ourselves, have to find the antidote. We have to find the medicine. We have to find the ammunition to fight off this global onslaught. And if we have each other, we have no doubt as to a victory. But our state of confusion, of disunity, cripples us. So we have to find a way, the means, to reach out to each other. First forgive ourselves and forgive each other. And to realize that we have a common purpose, a common mission, a sacred duty to be our own liberators. We can only rely on our ancestors for the lessons that they've taught us and the examples that they've set. That's all we can expect from them. We who are here in flesh and blood, it's up to us, nobody else. So in closing, let us understand the enormity of the task, but the means is within us. We have to go forward with confidence, as God teaches us, with confidence we have won even before we started. Magufuli has paid the price because this man was one of our most learned, our most experienced. He was a scientist. He understood the nature of the battlefield, but he did not budge 1 inch. He came in and he put his life on the line. No backing down. Forward ever.
Okay, yeah, all right, Sonia, the paper guy. Okay, time is almost beaten us. I just got one announcement to make about up and coming Africa Liberation Day, and then we'll just do a quick summing up. Yeah, so everybody takes like a minute just to say, just to sum up, and then we'll call in Ndugramani after to close the meeting for us. So just to quickly, Africa Liberation Day. As you can see the poster. Finally, after 2 years of lockdown and, we've been deprived from our usual gatherings in person. Hopefully this year, we have decided to again make an attempt to hold Africa Liberation Day in person. It will be on Friday, the 3rd of June in Birmingham at the Legacy Centre. Now, as you can see, the title is the Grand African Renaissance. And what Machiavelli did and achieved, we can see, was the beginning of that Renaissance. Now, obviously, this is just a holding flyer because there's a lot of information on it that's still to come. So it's still work in progress. But it's just to get it out quickly so everybody knows that LD is back on. As you will notice, we will only be doing it for 1 day. We normally do it over 2 days. The other day of LD will be held online, and we'll be holding that on the last Sunday in May. So just in case anybody wants any further information, there's a phone number. Please text, because when phone calls are coming in thick and hard, it's sometimes difficult to answer all of them. So if you send a text message, at least we have that message and we can act upon that. Or you can email us at our email, panafricancongressmovement@gmail.com, for those who want more information. But don't worry, more information will be coming about who the other speakers and other things like that. So just put that for your diary and make a note of that. African Liberation Day will be back in person this year in Birmingham at the Legacy Center. So now what I'd like to do, just before we call Indua Grimani to close the meeting for us, is quickly go around and just take a minute just to sum up. If you have any further thing to say, just a quick minute. So who would like to go first? Sister Asha?
It's very, very simple. Whatever the superpowers say is good for Africa, think the opposite. That was the simple way that my mother taught us when we were learning about Africa. Whatever these people say is good for you, think the opposite and start from there. We've heard a lot this evening about Ancestor Magufuli's legacy, and he has left very clear footsteps for us to follow and to walk in. And we have some of our leaders who are walking in those footsteps who are very much under threat. And we need to do more to inform ourselves of what is happening. So, for example, Abayi has had attempts on his life every year, at least one attempt on his life since he took office. And in 2018, he suffered 3 attempts every year. And this coup is another attempt. Now that they know the people won't remove him, or they can't remove him, they're now trying to use his own people to do that. So whatever they say is good for us, think the opposite, and then align ourselves with leaders who are doing the opposite of what these Europeans and these superpowers are suggesting is good for Africa. Zikoma Kwambi.
Okay, Santa Sana. Brother Sabilo?
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Tahaka. I will close off basically linking to an extent what the other panelists have said, and the words of Elder Pepukai, that we are all that we have got. We don't have anyone else that we can rely upon. And the words of Brother Pepukai linked with the question by Brother Leader as regards Tony Blair. I think I'll just read something that was penned by Tony Blair himself, which sums up basically the precarious position that we are in as Africans, for us to rely on this man, more particularly as a supposed advisor on the COVID pandemic. I fully agree with Brother Pepukai. This is all just part of the plan. Tony Blair says sustained cooperation between African governments, the private sector, and other stakeholders acting on a regional and continental basis will be necessary, supported by global bodies and partners. To what end is this support that he is talking about? He says, with every day that passes, the end of the COVID-19 pandemic draws closer, but so does the next global pandemic. So does the next global pandemic. It is time then to start preparing for it. So you have to ask yourself the question as to what this man's vision is for Africa. His vision is summed up by the next pandemic, because the current one has failed to take the numbers that they were expecting from the continent. So it's necessary to have him within our space so that he can start preparing the African continent for the next takeover and for this building of a distribution site for Africa in as far as the so-called vaccine is concerned. And there was a question posed about the World Economic Forum and the dismantling of the WEF. As far as I'm concerned, if the West believes in the forum and want to belong to the forum, that is their choice. But where Africa is concerned, we have no business whatsoever participating in that particular platform. And it's time that we consolidate our own African-centered and people-centered structures that address our interests, not someone else's interests, because the building of distribution centers of the so-called vaccine on the continent has nothing to do with our interests. So definitely, we as African people have to find a way of resisting what is going on and supporting the likes of Ethiopia, as what we are seeing currently playing itself out right now, whereby the demise of President Abiy in Ethiopia will be another big blow to the advancement of who we are as African people, and definitely the demise of our objectives in as far as the African unity that we so aspire to. And so definitely let us use the lesson learned from President Magufuli and those who have gone ahead of him to consolidate ourselves. And it's high time that we stand guided by the words of Kwame Ture when he says, if we do not voluntarily unite, unity will be forced upon us. If this COVID pandemic has not taught us the importance of uniting as African people, I don't know what will, because this is the beginning of the unity that is being forced upon us as Africans. Thank you very much.
Okay, Santa Sana. And your final summing up, brother leader.
Yeah, Tenamari, Rumbi Zokunamari, Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Once again, we hail Mwari Nyakusika, God, the creator of the universe, Muzuma Mokuru, our great ancestors, for blessing us to come together this evening and to honor the life, the legacy, the vision of our great son of Africa, our warrior king, Baba Pombe Magufuli. I say again, we must understand and respond appropriately to the fundamental governing principle of global geopolitics. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. Every African must understand this and what it means and the implications of that for us as Africans in the world. And by that, what I mean is, when Britain controlled Africa, Britain ruled the world. America controls Africa today, America rules the world. China has a vision to control Africa. China has a vision to rule the world. China is moving in on Africa and taking control of African space and African resources and African minds. Did brothers and sisters hear me? And African minds. We're now learning Mandarin in African schools. And there are confusion centers in African universities across the African continent. They are capturing our minds. Are there any Yoruba lessons being taught in China? Are there any Imhotep centers in Chinese universities? I doubt it. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. Russia is running a rampage on the African continent right now, clandestinely, right? And we don't even realize it. I can't go into that right now, brothers and sisters. So I just want to put that out there. Whoever controls Africa rules the world. So if Africans control Africa, Africans will rule the world. Everybody knows this except us, the African. And so any leader that stands up, that gives a glimmer of hope to Africa, to Africans, that they can take charge of their own destiny, must be removed very swiftly. And that's why we must interrogate the death of Pombe Magufuli. We've been too silent on that. And we must, brothers and sisters, interrogate the implications of a Tony Blair being invited in Tanzania to advise the new administration. That has serious implications, and we must not miss it. It's very, very important, beloved. And as we talk about the vaccine and the pandemic debacle, let us remember 1998, the Al-Shifa pharmaceutical plant in the Sudan that was established in order to enable an African nation to manufacture its own pharmaceutics was bombed, right? On the pretext that they were housing weapons or manufacturing weapons of mass destruction. Now, we've forgotten that, but it happened in 1998. Let us remember that, brothers and sisters. Africans must not have any semblance of self-determination. Remember, as Brother Sabella speaks rightly on Baba Pombe Magufuli's attempt to also enhance the use of African natural remedies, that he had embraced the Madagascar cure that was pronounced, and was engaging with Madagascar to look at the cure that they had for COVID. And there was an attempt on there was an assassination attempt on the life of Rajoelina, the president of Madagascar. We have to remember that as well. All of this is relevant to the legacy of Pombe Magufuli. And we must remember that he gave us a premonition. He pronounced a premonition on his own assassination. We must not forget that as we move forward. So, beloved brothers and sisters, we must listen and heed the words of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Messiah Garvey. And yes, Baba, Elder Pepukai is correct. We are all we've got. Papa Marcus Messiah Garvey says, unite organize now or perish. And remember, he said, wherever we are, we must be organized as a nation of people. Baba John Henry Clark, warrior, scholar, and Garveyite, said, whatever we do in the name of liberation, if it does not include nation building, we are wasting our time. Baba John Henry Clark. We have to engage in African nation building and be serious about that. Unite, organize now or perish. Rise, you mighty African people, for you can accomplish whatever you will. Rumbidzo kunamwari Africa, to the God of Africa be the glory. Tendai Mwari.
Yeah, 10 January. And finally, Elder Pepperkai, just for your summing up comments.
Yes, I'm guided by the teaching of Sister Asha's mother to her, that whatever the white people say, think the opposite. They were right to know when they said that the factory that we're building in the Sudan was to produce weapons of mass destruction. Yes, mass destruction to European dependency. That is what we're doing. And that is what they came against us. So the question is, how do we protect ourselves? Because whenever our leaders do the wrong thing, betray us, we chastise them, and rightfully so. But how do we protect those who serve our best interests? That is the challenge. Because the business is, if you serve your people, you sign your own death warrant. If you betray them, you get money.
And you live forever.
Well,
so to speak.
yes. So the question is, how do we protect ourselves? How do we arm ourselves? Because make no mistake, Europeans, whether they're Russians, whether they're Americans, European, whatever they call themselves, Chinese, Japanese, whoever, nobody willingly gives up power. Nobody. They want to hold on to it. And as my grandmother says, the kick from a dying horse is a vicious kick. And that is what we face now. Because I've seen developments coming out of Africa. Africans sometimes no higher educational training, coming up with some fantastic scientific and technological development that boggles the life science. And it's coming out of Africa. If me and you can see, or enemy can see, they know the potential. They know the tide is turning. And they want to keep us in this wretched condition so they can triumph and lord over us. We have got to recognize that our unity fence is fragile and weak. Our sense of identity is shaky. Our sense of responsibility leaves a lot to be desired. We have to shoulder responsibilities. We have to straight up our backs and face the terrorists that surrounds us. And as Claude McKay put it, our back can't be further in the wall. We have to come off fighting and fighting strong with confidence. My brothers and sisters, we've talked a lot. Let's look at how we can work together to ensure that we're not anybody's servant upon this planet. We're all liberators.
Okay, Asante Sana, Elder Pepperkai, and Asante Sana to all who came today, all the panelists. I'd like to thank Sister Asha, all the way coming in from Malawi. And I would also like to thank Brother Sabello from the continent in Azania. Also, big thanks to Brother Leader Bandaka for his the information that you put across today. It's tremendous. And like you, I agree, the death of Magufuli is something that need to be focused more on, because it's happened a year ago and it's like, it's more or less forgotten. And it's something that we can see it was a trend. I mean, Magufuli was the biggest name, but we can see the president of Burundi, right across Africa, it was death after death after death after death during that time. And they used the cover of COVID to assassinate so many leaders. And of course, the easy excuse was they all died of COVID. And so it's something that we need to bear in mind. And Magufuli has laid down a benchmark. So I hope all the other leaders in Africa are looking at that. As we know, most of them will not act because, as like Magufuli, they're not fearless. So they will do the bidding of the colonialists, basically. But we need more leaders like Magufuli with backbone, knowing that once you put something down, it can only be built on. And there's 1,000 Magufulis in Africa right now just waiting to emerge. Many, many, many. So, as they say, you can kill one, but 3 will take their place and 4 will take their place. And in the end, Africa will triumph. There's no doubt about it. It's an inevitability. They cannot stop the tide of history. It's ordained. Africa will triumph. So we know they will try whatever they can to do it, but we as African people, we just got to be consistent. That's all we can do. Be consistent, keep going. And yes, we will get our knocks from time to time, but when has that been strange to us? We went through the biggest Holocaust the world has ever seen, and we emerged. We came out the other side, and we're still fighting. Many others didn't. The Native Americans, what's happened to them? The native people of the Caribbean, did they come out fighting? No, but we did. There's something special about us. There's something special about African people because we are the original people, and they cannot get rid of us. By trying to get rid of us, they'll end up getting rid of themselves, but they're not going to do it. So it's just going around with confidence, and Magufuli showed the way forward. Just be confident in what you believe, be confident in what you say, and most of all, if you are going to ask the populace to do something, be the example. Do not ask people to do what you're not willing to do yourself. And I think that was the biggest challenge that Magufuli put down, so much so that many other politicians was against him because they're not willing to cut their salary in by a quarter. They're not willing to fly economic class instead of first class. They're not willing to do none of that. And Magufuli shows if you want to be with the people, if you want to tune in, get the people to tune in with your ideas, be part of them. And we can see for what went down in Tanzania, the people were 100% behind him. And that's what frightened the so-called Western powers, because how can somebody be so radical as they say, and the people are 100% in support of him? But Machiavelli stood his ground. He may not be here in the physical anymore, but he's surely with us in the spiritual, because wherever we go, wherever we see that name, it keeps coming up. And the deeds that he left is there to be seen. And that little clip I showed, how he challenged the Chinese, because that was the contract that they were being given, and he basically ripped it up. I wish and I hope that other African leaders take note. There was a case when the Canadian Mining Company, I think it was, the usual in Africa is they come do the mining, they come drill the oil or dig the gas out. 90% for me, 10% for you. That's the state of affairs. Some make it even 5%, and they're happy with that. Seeming so, because they don't care about the people. It's coming to them, they share it up amongst themselves. But Magufuli managed to beat the Canadian company to a 50-50 split. So if he can do it, it shows it's possible to be done. So I hope all these other countries take note and get up and be a Magufuli. The word Magufulification is a word that needs now to be echoed across Africa. And I hope it's picked up by the populace right across Africa. And they challenged their leader to look at what Magufuli did. And they said, if he can do it, we want the same for our country. It is possible. And never let up. So again, I thank everybody for coming today. And I know, like I say, we have been...
Brother Kahaka?
Yeah.
Just asking a question, my brother, if I may.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. I didn't hear the very opening of the program this evening. Did we make mention to the passing of Baba Huey Andrew?
No, we haven't, we haven't. I'm glad you remind me of that.
Yes, you want to take it from there, beloved? And
well, if you know a
bit
more than me, could you just fill the viewers in on that, who he was and and when he passed?
Well, Tendai Mwari, we got the news not Friday gone, but not the Kuumba Day gone, but the Kuumba Day before, which is Friday. Okay. We got the news of the passing of Baba Huey Andrew in Dominica, the place of his birth, where he had been residing for the last couple of years. Of course, we did hear that he was in weak and declining health. We've been having some updates. I've certainly spoken to Dr. Agri Burke a few times, who has given us some updates on Baba Huey's health status. So we had the news, as I said, not Kuumba Day gone, but the Kuumba Day before, the Friday before, and we gather he passed that morning. We got the news quite early, actually, after his passing. We have spoken briefly to his daughter, Laura, Sister Laura, but we're due to speak to her more extensively tomorrow. I can inform brothers and sisters that the Al-Keblan Revivalist Movement will be dedicating our next Shumira, which is our monthly African traditional worship, every first Umoja Day, first Sunday of the month. Our next one will be dedicated to the memory and paying tribute to Baba Huey Andrew. As we know, he was an outstanding warrior in our community, a Christian minister, a teacher, school teacher, but also an activist. And as a Christian minister, he expounded the Black liberation theology, making the practice of the religion relevant to the liberation of African people. and relevant to the cultural identity of African people. And that may seem like a contradiction, but when we have so many of our people in the church, there has to be a way station, a bridge to bring them back, return them back to the way, turn them back to our authentic tradition. And that's a role that Baba Huey played. He brought the church into the community, he brought the community into the church, and he organized Black History Month presentations. I certainly went to his church at least 3 times to do a Black History Month presentation for Sunday service, especially for children and young people, and others have been brought in. He organized Reparation Sunday in his church as well. So he brought the community in the church, and he didn't bring us in to Christianize us. He brought us in to politicize the church. He brought us in to Africanize the Africans in the church. That was his mission, and he did it tremendously well. He was deeply committed, a hard worker in our community, and an institution builder. Just one other thing to say is that he also headed the Queen Mother Moore School, Saturday School, which was functioned for over 30 years. I can't remember exactly how many years, but it was definitely over 30 years that institution served our community. So we give thanks for his life, we give thanks for his legacy, and we say, in the words of our divine ancestors, Mzumukuru, may his soul rise like Ra on the wings of Ma'at after a favorable judgment in the council of Asar. Ashe, 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 O Amen Ra.
Yeah.
It is done. Tendai Mwari. Just to say that our Shumira is at Chestnut Community Center, which is St. Anne's Road, Tottenham, and we start at 12 noon. And that's the first Sunday of April, which I believe is the 6th of April. Yeah. So please join us to pay tribute to Baba Huey Andrew, Baba Reverend Huey Andrew. Baba, Brother Tahaka, I'm humbled by your indulgence. Give thanks and praises. Tendai Mwari, Tatenda.
Okay, Tendai Mwari, and Asante Sana.
Tendai Mwari.
Yeah. So at this point now, I'd like to pass over to Undugre Mani, who will be doing the closing proceedings for us.
Asante Sana. Santeni Sana to everybody on the panel. Thank you very much. All to the family listening and watching. Definitely, they're all, as always, is with us, and the ancestors definitely were speaking through the panelists. There's so much information that was given, so much wisdom, and even as somebody watching myself, learning so much. So the work continues for us to educate ourselves and work together in that Magufulization of ourselves and Africa and the diaspora. But we're now going to end, and as we began, we're going to coalesce our energies and be thinking of appreciation and thanks to the all and to the ancestors that have been with us and are always with us and guide us and are our protection, are our way forward and the basis for all what we do. And we are in the Perfect Congress. You didn't use Kiswahili as John Pombe, Brother John Pombe Magufuli was promoting for as the language for a united Africa, which we've been doing for many years, and it's beautiful to see him to do that, and we continue in that tradition. So, Ndugu, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And you can just let me know when we can see that.
Yep, should be coming up. Okay, it's up.
Beautiful. Okay. And just to, this is the closing of this ritual, Mabadaliko Yan Nishati, the change of energy. We're going to stimulate that energy again so that we are in oneness, thinking of appreciation and thanks and gratitude to the ancestors and to each other here, and that we can focus ourselves and also part from each other with love, honor, and respect until we meet each other again, and give thanks that we can have a Pan-African meeting, a truly Pan-African gathering of the minds as we have today, and continue in that and may that grow stronger. So I'm going to ring the chime in order to change that energy, to stimulate that energy change. And I'm going to ask Brother Leader, is there a number that you are resonating with that we could use between 1 and 9?
Number 7.
7, beautiful. Quantity for spiritual quantity for wisdom, seeking truth and intuition. So if we can, if you wish to take part, there's no need to not to take part. If you don't wish to take part, that's absolutely fine. But if you do, please sit straight, feet flat on the floor if you can, palm of your hands on your thighs. Going to ring the chime 7 times and allow that vibration to go around us, through us and over us. Open up our third eye to universal consciousness and link with each other as we part from each other. So I'll count in Kiswahili, and those who are here, if you wish to take part, please don't mute yourself. Okay, I'll begin. Moja.
Moja.
Mbili.
Mbili.
Tatu.
Tata.
Nne.
Nne.
Tano.
Tana.
Sita.
Sita.
Saba.
Saba.
Asante. And so now we'll end by speaking the words of manifestation and power on screen. What we say, we bring into reality. Our highest vibration, our highest energy brings it into reality. So careful what we say. So if you're not familiar with in Kiswahili, just follow after me. Please follow after me. I'll say it, and I'll say it slowly, and then just follow after me. You can follow on screen. Okay, I shall begin. Mapenzi wote ni mapenzi yangu.
Mapenzi wote ni mapenzi yangu.
Hakuna mwanzo na hakuna mwisho.
Hakuna mwanzo na hakuna mwisho.
Naomba ufahamu wangu ya wote uendelee kukua.
Naomba ufahamu wangu ya wote uendelee kukua.
Beautiful. Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu.
Nguvu zote kwa watu wetu.
And Cometian, Anuk, Amen.
Anuk, Amen.
The will of the all is my will. There is no beginning and there is no end. May my understanding of the all continue to grow. All power to our people. I am. Amen.
All power to our people.
All power to our people.
Asante sana, Jamal. Thanks very much, Kindred.
Asante sana.
Asante sana.
Karibu.
Beautiful.
Asante sana for all those who tuned in today. And remember, this video is up on our channel, PACMTV. For those who haven't seen it live, they can always go to the channel and watch it at a later date. So I'd like to say Kwaheri to everybody until next time. Tutuanana.